Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Blue and this is the day 4 recap of the MSI event, and it's actually the very last recap for the MSI event as it came to a close today. Now there were only 2 semifinal matches and then the grand finals today, and all of them were best of 7s, but neither of them had to go that much of the distance. So let's just break into it right away. Up first, we had NIP, that's Ninjas in Pajamas, versus Space Station Gaming. Now, this was a pretty intense matchup going into this. You have SSG, who is the number 4 team behind NIP, Na'Vi, and Envy. And 2 of those teams are out. So these were the 2 top PPL teams left in the bracket, and they were going up against each other. And this could have went either way, although NIP is the clearly better team on paper, and they've had a better season thus far. Plus, they were undefeated for a good portion of that. Game 1, starting off, they went to Brightmarsh. That was NIP's pick. They actually got the Genos and the Torv pick on this map. Mitao for SSG was there for a lot of the last hits, and he was pretty much saving his DPS players in some key fights. When Ares and FreezeGod were taking some 1v1s and it looked like they were about to lose, Mitao looked like it always was him coming into play and helping them with that fight and finishing off those kills and giving his teammates some heals as well. So he was playing a major part in those team fights. But after, towards the end of round 1, beginning of round 2, Tenor and Alex pretty much just woke up. It's like that first round was their warm-up, was their practice. That was their, get the blood flowing and stuff, because after that they pretty much shut down the show. Alex did phenomenal, but even better, Tenor, he finished 26-5 on Leon with the Genos and Torv pockets, so great play from them. They actually win that game. Game 2 goes to Serpent Beach, and this was SSG's map pick, and it's one of their strongest maps, if not their strongest map. But NIP was able to come out on top once again. This time, Space Station was able to grab the Torv Genos, and they had a Victor Eevee as well. Victor was a little bit of a spicy pick on PC in the PPL already, and they kind of add that spice in there for the Torv Genos. You can give it to Victor. That's a strong combo, or you can give it to Eevee as well. On Serpent Beach, I would think that you need to give it to Victor because Eevee can kind of, the Torv can lose sight of that Eevee a lot easier than a Victor. But again, it's PPL. They're on the same page. Those communications are key. NIP was still able to grab a 10th pick Drogos into this, and it turned out to work in their favor. The Victor, Ares on Victor pretty much looked non-existent in these team fights. He wasn't able to establish himself on the high ground, and that's very important in these team fights on Serpent Beach, especially in that capture phase of the rounds, and he was unable to do so. So SSG lost that battle to a Drogos. Bird and Tenor were running the same strategy that they were doing yesterday. They had the Tyra and Damba on Serpent yesterday. And today, I think they ran. Need to make sure I don't say this wrong here. Yeah, they had the Leon and the Damba this time. So Tenor's on the Leon again, and this time they were running the same strategy, especially on their payload pushes. Damba would go in, Bird would go into that room right there on the low ground, and he would kind of sit in there. He's able to line of sight his front lines for those heals as they push the payload towards the end, and that's great positioning by Bird, and great tactics as well. But Leon, Tenor, yesterday he was on the Tyra, same map, same healer, same situation, and he'll sit in that room with Damba and he'll kind of protect him. Anyone tries to dive onto that Damba, it's not as successful with Tenor standing there. And pretty much no mid-round, no mid-game adjustments was coming out from SSG. They were just doing what looked like the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Didn't happen for them. So NIP was able to take game 2. Game 3 came down to NIP winning as well. Tyra, for the first time, came into this set. but it was for Space Station Gaming. They also had Genos. We're on Shattered Desert as well. So Genos and Tyra, those are decent picks. Genos being a better pick on Shattered Desert than maybe a Tyra, but Tyra has been coming out on Shattered Desert quite often during this event. Space Station elected to take the Ruckus. This is the second time, maybe the third time, I can't remember off the top of my head, that they've taken Ruckus for Sadak on Shattered Desert. He did well with it yesterday. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to have the same effect that he did yesterday that he today. NIP, let's talk about the team comps here. For the side of NIP, they had, take a look at the draft here. NIP had Barrick, Khan, Furia, Maeve, Pip. If you look at that, yeah, that's a really good lineup, but it gets even better when you think about the sustain that each one of those characters has. I mean, Barrick has his bowling ball shield, has that rocket boots ability, and the one that just activates when he's low health. So that's super sustained from the Barrick. You have Khan with the battle shout. You have Khan with his shield, more healing behind his shield. That's a lot of sustain from a character. Then you have Furia, who's able to get out of these fights, who's able to stay in these fights and output a lot of damage. Not to mention, it's the healer. So that's a lot of sustain. Able to put shields when they heal as well. If I didn't quite catch if Bird was running that in his loadout. I think he was in one of the other games, so I'm going to assume that he did in this game. And then you have Maeve with that damage reduction build that a lot of people like to run on her, and her movement ability. So that's a lot of sustain. And then you have Pip, who's pretty much your off healer, can deal lots of DPS as well as heal his teammates and himself with Moxie as well in his loadout, getting that additional healing. I mean, after Caught 3s came out, he's still healing for 700 on a Pip potion, and he's not even running Mega Potion. So that was ultimate sustain from the side of NIP. And from SSG, it was kind of lacking in the ults. You have Ashe, Ruckus, Cassie, Genos, and Tyra. And like Pretty Hair said on the broadcast, Tyra and Ruckus, that's pretty much the same ult. It's a lot of damage coming out at once from those two characters. You have Cassie, who's able to reveal to the whole team and the whole enemy team. I think that was more to counter the Maeve pick when she pops her Midnight. And then you have Genos through time and space. You pretty much just throw those out there, and it's like fishing, Sometimes you get a catch, sometimes you don't. And then you have Ashe, and if those Ashe ults aren't really coming into play and aren't getting, multiple stuns, and you're not following up and getting any kills off the back of those, that pretty much just becomes okay, she's going to live for 8 more seconds here. Let's focus her down as soon as that ends. NIP was able to take that game. Game 4 did, however, come down to Space Station Gaming winning. Space Station Gaming banned the Leon this time, and then they were able to get Atlas because of this. Round 1, they find the first payload conversion, so they were up 2-0, and that was a big momentum shift for them. Mitao, although playing the Maldamba, you wouldn't expect this, was the hard carry in this game. And we actually saw a lot of this play in the regular season in the PCL with Jeff the Raccoon on Nemesis. He was able to win a lot of games, or they were able to win a lot of games off the back of his Maldamba play and just the positioning and the decisions and the ult management from him. Same here with Mitao. He had great stuns. He was putting out good amounts of damage when he was needed to, and he was getting a lot of heals. Plus his ultimates were beautiful. And they talked about it in the broadcast, the way that the ultimate works. He was able to position it perfectly to put the enemy characters in bad positions. So great play from Mitao. And Freeze God's Maeve was doing very, very well, especially with Sadak's Atlas to complement it. And he had some very good setbacks. And he was running Temporal Divide, where your shield wall, or whatever you want to call it, was super bigger. I mean, it doesn't even tell you the percentage of how big it gets, but just great play from them overall. Let's move into game 5 now. It's 3-1 in favor of NIP, and this is where NIP closes it out. They win the set 4-1. SSG did get Atlas again. We're playing on Jag Falls this time. Game 4 was on Stone Keep, by the way. Sorry I didn't mention that, I don't think. So Space Station Gaming on Jag Falls Game 5 gets Atlas again, but this time it's not as effective. They just couldn't find their footing this game as a team. Diggy Dog and Alex showed up big for NIP when Bittner was kind of pressured, so SSG was able to apply more pressure to Bittner, but like I said, Diggy Dog really showed up here. And Bonker did Bonker things as usual, just like he did yesterday in the set that they played. So they were able to come out on top. Let's move on to match number 2. Semifinals number 2. It's Penta, the PML team, which is basically just a PPL team in the wrong league, and Virtus Pro. And Virtus Pro actually stunned both these teams, the underdogs, pretty much. I mean, Penta not so much an underdog, but when they went up against Navi, you would say that they were the underdog. Virtus Pro is the underdog against Envy. Both of these teams came out on top yesterday. So today, they're here. Game 1 goes to Ascension Peak, and this was Virtus Pro's pick. They did very well on it in the past as well. Pule Ule just really couldn't get into team fights. He was playing the Con, and he was constantly harassed. He ended up going 0-12, and that was a big part of Penta winning this game so dominantly. They were able to eliminate the Con from Virtus Pro, and Pule Ule was having a really tough day. And Doseps was on the Inara, and this was another problem for me. Overall, throughout this entire set, it went 5 games. Penta was able to win 4-1. VP stole game 3 away off Hakate and Fishiko's great play. And Pule Ule was able to find some success on the Con in game 3. And here's the key. Doseps was not playing Inara. This was a problem with me with Virtus Pro throughout this entire season so far. They were supposed to have Sephi Cloud. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what happened there. So when you have Pule Ule and you have Doseps, in my mind, before the season starts, I say, okay, Pule Ule has played main tank for Nocturnes before and some other teams, so I'm going to think that he's playing the main tank. Doseps has played off tank before. He's played main tank as well, but more primarily he's been an off tank. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to see him play the off tank. Well, it's the other way around. We have Pule Ule playing these off tanks, and we have the main tanks being played by Doseps. And I don't really think it works that way. And another concept is that because they're playing the opposite of what I think they would play, Pule Ule is doing decently on the off tanks overall. Not today, obviously. And Doseps doing okay-ish. He's not having a great season, but he's not having like a terrible season. He is underperforming, but not super underperforming, if that makes sense, on the main tanks. But he can play off tank. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this going into the roster video that I'm going to be doing, or the roster videos for all the leagues and a bunch of teams that I'm going to be doing, what teams can do or to maybe get better roster-wise, and what teams need roster changes and which ones don't. I think VP needs one. At first, I was going to say it would be Hakate because his champ pool is lacking, but he showed yesterday and he showed today, even through the loss, that he's been practicing the champs that he can play to get better at them, and when he does, he plays them at a very good level. So that he's skating by, because the way that their DPS duo for VP works, you have Fishiko and you have Hakate. One is a pure hit scan, one is a pure blaster, and that works. Some teams you need someone who can play blaster and hit scan, because if you go double hit scan, and VP is really not the team to do that. You know, they don't really go double blaster. They don't really go double hit scan on the DPS duos. So that's fine. It works the way they're doing it right now. But if they are going to make a change, I'll go into it a little bit later. But it's going to have to be a tank, either coming in and replacing Pule Ule or replacing Doseps. And not full replacing like they're off the team. Maybe they can take a step back. Who knows? Right now, in this current meta, I feel like they need a change. We'll talk about that later. But game 1, still, Erase was hitting key shots. He was using big game Cassie, and he was deleting the tanks. Doseps was not up to par on the Inara as well. He went 3-8 overall, and that's not too far away from 0-12 Pule Ule's Con. Game 2, we went to Shattered Desert. Khan was not picked or banned, and he was also not picked or banned in Game 5. So Game 2 and 5, we saw no Khan at all, through bans, through picks. That was very interesting. And Sims was on Maeve again, and he did fantastic once again. And Penta got Torvald, so that even made it worse for the side of VP. Leon plus Maeve, diving Fishiko on BK was the go trigger for Penta, it seemed. Fishiko's playing BK. That's not a super high pick champion on Shattered Desert, but he's comfortable on it. VP's comfortable with that in their lineup. And they go into this game, and all game long, Leon, Maeve, every time one of them, mostly Leon, would get that Torv bubble and they would dive Fishiko's BK. And as soon as he was half health, not even low health, not even dead, the whole Penta roster would just in their head click, go, and they would go. And it showed. They applied so much pressure that game. Game 3 went to Ice Mines. This is the one where Virtus.pro was able to win. They break out a Vivian for Hecate. They break out a Drogos for Fishiko. That's not as common, so it was a little spicy. Kind of threw Penta off their game maybe. And they came through big. They made some big plays between the two of them. Dosips was not on Inara, finally. So game 1 and game 2, he played Inara. Game 3, he was finally able to make something happen on his end, playing the Barrack rather than the Inara. I think that's better for him because, again, he used to be an off-tank, so he has that damage mentality to him. And Pule Ole found better success on Khan this game as well, which is not as typical because there's really only one place to throw people off of the map with him, and that's the capture point. After that, it really comes down to team communication, trying to burn those priority targets when you grab them with Khan, but he did fantastic there as well, running the off lane with his damages. Game 4, we went to Brightmarsh, and Penta was able to take this one. And Pip gets through the draft for Virtus.pro and not for Penta. That was interesting. But Simsalute, again, played the Maeve, and he race was on Vivian this time, so once the Wreckers came online, they were able to just run through Virtus.pro. Virtus.pro did take Cassie to counter the Maeve instead of taking it away or banning it. And I think this was a big problem early on with the Inara picks because Excentra and Penta love the Inara. You saw that in the first 2 days they played, or the first 3 days they played. They love Inara. And Gore kind of touched on this too. If you're going to take that Inara away, are you losing something from it? And with VP, they're losing something. They're losing Dosip's full potential of being an impact in this game. He did way better on Barrack, was able to sustain himself longer, even though that's not the ideal sustain champion over Inara. But he was able to sustain himself longer. He was able to make some plays. He was able to put out some good damage as well. So they weren't really getting anything out of taking away Inara. So I agree, you don't really have to take away Maeve. You don't really have a Maeve player that can play at that level against Penta just yet. I don't even know. I think Fishiko would play the Maeve, but I wouldn't feel confident with him playing the Maeve or Hecate at that. So either ban it or let him get it, I guess. And they continue to let them get it. Civ's Maeve's Midnight almost backcaps it, by the way. He was backcapping the point a couple feet away from just scoring, and he pops the Midnight. This might have been the alarm getting set off here. Either way, Hecate, playing Cassie, was able to respawn and just instantly jump off the high ground from the spawn. They're playing on Brightmarsh, remember. And he was able to win that 1v1 against the Maeve. So that was good for him. Good call out from the team and good 1v1 situation going to the side of Hecate. That was able to save the game at that point. They ended up losing it still. Sims was able to clean up, surviving an Evil Mojo at the end in overtime. He survives an Evil Mojo that I think got 2, maybe 3 members, and he was able to survive it. And then he got a double kill. I think it was a triple kill, but the game was over by the time that happened. So great play by Simsalute on the Maeve all around. Game 5. This is where, if I check the drafts here, I think this is the game where Maeve was banned by Virtus.pro. They go to Stone Keep. This ended up being a 4-3 as well as game 4 on Brightmarsh. But Virtus.pro has first pick. They ban Ashe and then they ban Maeve. And that's huge against this team. You're going to let them get the Inara. Which is fine because Crunchy doesn't have the Ashe, which he's been dominating, and a lot of people have been this week at this event overall with Ashe. She's been a big part in not only the entire tournament, but especially yesterday and today. So you take away the Ashe and you take away the Maeve. You don't really want to play those champs. You could play Ashe. We've seen you do that before, but not playing the Maeve is a big disadvantage for you guys, and banning it out is better than trying to steal it away or letting them have it, as it hasn't worked throughout this entire set so far. They grabbed the Torvald and the Leon duo this time, but it just wasn't enough. It really just came down to VP not being able to deal with the Ruckus as efficiently as they would have hoped. And Khan didn't get picked or banned this time. Again, as I said, this was the second game this set where he wasn't seen in action at all. I think Virtus.pro's tanks played very poorly overall. Puleule had one decent game on the Khan. Dosips was the same game. He had a decent game on Barrick. I think they really were lacking in today's matches or today's match versus Penta. But that's not as big because, you know, we're going to get into it. Penta versus NIP. Penta's a really good team, and it's no shame to say he did poorly against Penta. SimSalute and Erase did great again in this set overall. They were able to make some fantastic plays between the two of them, whether it was just one or the other doing it alone or both of them working together. So moving on to the grand finals, we have Ninjas in Pajamas, or NIP, versus Penta now. So game one goes to Brightmarsh, and before the set started, they asked in the interview with Bird, you know, how would you like this set to go? And Bird said he had a lot of laundry to do, so he wants to 4-0 so he can get out of there. Eventually, Penta ended up winning this entire tournament. They beat NIP 4-1, the juggernaut, the best team in the league record-wise. And, you know, if your opinion is Navi's the better team, that's valid. But at the same time, NIP is the best team right now, which could go to be said that Penta is now the best team. That's not in the PPL. So, first game goes to Brightmarsh. NIP picks it again. That's a comfort pick for them. Both teams get comfort drafts and comfort picks, but the problem with Penta's is that it's not really it's a good draft for Penta, but it's not a good draft for Penta against NIP, so to speak. Penta's tank duo couldn't really create any space. I think, if I'm correct, they had an Inara. I do know that. They had the Inara and the Barrack, so they didn't really have a traditional quote-unquote off-tank. They weren't able to create any space for their DPS duo. Alex on Leanne just played so dominantly. He made play after play again. He got a triple kill a couple times. So he was able to really dominate. Bittner did his job on Pip as well. He even got a big 4-man chicken at once. So big plays coming out of Alex and Bittner once again. They were the stars of that game. Game 2, they go to Bazaar. This is where Penta steals the show, and they take the win. It was a 4-1 game 1 in favor of NIP. Game 2, Penta beats NIP 4-0. Game 3, Penta wins 4-0. Game 4 is where it was a 3-4 in favor of Penta. And then Penta beats them in game 5 4-0. So Penta really making a statement in this final set. But game 2, they go to Bazaar. Penta drafts better this time around to deal with NIP. NIP still gets a good draft as well. Erase was hitting all his shots and leading the way on the Cassie. Pretty much played Cassie on Bazaar the same way he played Vivian on Bazaar yesterday, and it was fantastic. It was tremendous. His positioning, hitting his shots, his target prioritization, it was just overall amazing. And Crunchy was making tons of space on Ashe once again. He's been doing that all tournament, and here he is doing it against the best of the best. And Penta was just winning the head-to-head team fights. Raw damage, raw mechanics, raw skill, raw team fights, they were winning. And Bird was pretty much getting shut down in the back line. And this was to go to this was actually throughout the entire set through games 2, 3, 4, and 5. So other than game 1, Bird was pretty much getting focused out. He had, I think, through 1 or 2 rounds, he was already at double-digit deaths, which I know isn't that important when you have 2 juggernaut teams like this going up against each other. But if you're out of the fight that many times that early on, it's really going to show in the scoreline, and it did for the side of Penta. Game 3, we went to Jag Falls, and Penta was able to win this one as well. Penta picks up Pip first pick with Leanne. So they knew that Bittner is very comfortable playing the Pip. Jag Falls is a really good map for Pip, and Bittner's really good on Jag Falls with Pip. So their second pick, so Penta immediately, it's the second pick overall in the draft, but it's Penta's first pick in the draft, and they go ahead and take that Pip. Then they take the Leon, which Erase has been doing fantastic on, and he's comfortable with it this tournament as well. So they didn't want NIP to get that once again. Makoa, Khan, and Atlas were all banned, and Torv is taken. And this was interesting because I like Penta's thought process of taking the Leon and the Pip very early, because on the other side you have Torv being taken. But if you look at the history of NIP's drafts, because they have Bonker, because they have Diggy Dog, Bonker is that main tank for them. But when they draft that Torvald, they go with 2 off tanks, and normally one of those off tanks that can be a hybrid main tank like Ashe, and they give it to Diggy Dog, who is their Ashe player, and then they give the Torv to Bonker. So you know that if they're going to go Torv here this early in the draft, they're probably going to take the Ashe who's on the board. Makoa's gone, Khan's gone, Atlas is gone. So Ashe is still on the board. They're probably going to take that. I thought maybe taking the Ashe with the Pip would have been the better play. I think you can deal with a Leon very easily. But then again, you can't, because it's being paired with the Torvald. But Pip with Torvald is pretty bad. So this was very good drafting from the side of Penta. They said, hey, we'll give you Ashe. That's fine. We're going to take away 2 really good champs that you have done well with, especially with a Torv bubble. So that's really good. NIP was able to draft Xin with their 5th and final pick in this draft. But the Cassie was the one getting the Torvald combo for the side of NIP. Erase and Simslow started making plays early on, and the Penta rotations throughout the entire game were just beautiful on this map. Erase was able to just dive backlines whenever he wanted on the Leon. Then you had Sims on the Pip. As soon as the match started, they got not even a pick. They just got some damage onto one target, and they just said go, and they dove this backline. Their rotations were beautiful. They were able to focus out some targets. Diggy Dog and Bonker both went 0-8 this game. That was it's not common for them to do that, to have that kind of scoreline. And Accenture goes undying on Anara versus NIP, might I remind you, on Jag Falls. He had an outstanding Jag Falls game yesterday in the tournament, most notably that play where Phoenix threw him off the map as Khan. He was able to wall him and kind of boop him off the map with that play. But then today, going against NIP, another juggernaut in the PPL, going 0 deaths on Anara in this game against them, 4-0ing them, and just playing so dominantly. He was getting multi-kills himself. He was creating so much space. He was a beast. And you have to remember, he's a sub, man. So like throughout this entire tournament, I'm just thinking like, wow, what if Ovum was there? And then the next time they face a better team and they beat them more convincingly, I'm like, what if Ovum was there? I was just asking myself that in this entire time, but no shortage of plays coming from Accenture. Great play from him. Game 4, they go to Serpent Beach. And this time, Penta was able to win it in a 4-3 fashion. NIP take Torv again. But Penta takes the Ashe away this time with some tank bans. So there was the same tank bans. Makoa, Khan, Atlas were banned out. I think Pip was gone as well, but not a big Pip map in Serpent Beach. Let's actually check what the actual bans were. So Serpent Beach, Khan and Maeve banned out by NIP. Makoa and Atlas were banned out by Penta. So Serpent Beach is not a huge Pip map, off the top of my head. So they take the Torvald first pick automatically, and what does Penta do? Their first pick is Ashe Leon. They ended up getting the Pip 5th in their draft. So all that was left really for NIP's tank. You don't want a solo tank with Torv. That's not ideal. And that never really, 99% of the time, doesn't end up in your favor. So they took the Anara, which means Bonker is going to be playing that Anara. Diggy Dog would be on the Torvald. And at first, Diggy Dog was looking very good on this Torvald. The bubbles were coming in clutch. They had the Eevee. They had the Cassie to pair with it. But like I said, with the SSG NIP match with Torvald and Eevee on Serpent Beach, it's really hard because Eevee can Torvald can kind of lose track of Eevee with her movement abilities and her trying to avoid getting damaged. If she has to leave his line of sight, she just has to. So it was kind of iffy from there. NIP was actually up in this game 3-1. Like I said, those Torv bubbles are coming in. But once that record started to take effect, once the Pip started to get going from Simsaloo, Penta just started winning team fights. Even if they were at a disadvantage or had no advantage, it was just a raw, even team fight. Or they were down in ult economy, or they were down in man-to-man numbers on team fights, they were somehow coming out on top of those. So that was big plays coming from Penta. Game 5, we went to Frog Isle. This was an interesting draft because Bittner has shown in the past that he plays super well on Strix, let alone on Frog Isle with Strix. And yesterday, we saw the Strix come out for the side of Penta as well. So for NIP, I think maybe they were like, I don't think Penta is going to take the Strix. And if they do so happen to, we'll have an answer for it. So they banned out Canessa with their first ban. Right then and there, Penta recognized what they were trying to do for the side of NIP, and it was just great strategy. So they banned out Makoa Atlas. Torvald was banned out as well. So, you know, you're trying to get Diggy Dog something he can work with here. So they grabbed the Ashe first pick. It's a great first pick, but an even better first pick with that Canessa ban coming out. Penta, they grabbed Khan and Strix here. I think Diggy Dog's more comfortable on Ashe. I'm not certain. We'd have to ask him. So taking the Ashe first, leaving Khan Strix open, I don't think that's a good pick. You don't really have to first pick Strix, but I think they took the Ashe because you really, if you were to end up getting the Strix, I think it's more frustrating to have an Ashe diving you than it is a Khan at that moment. But they were able to get Ashe, Barrack. They had an Eevee and a Tyra this time for the damage amp, but it was no match for the Strix. Erase pretty much just went off with it. Simsaloo went off with Maeve again, and they had a Genos to damage boost the Strix. That's a lot of damage coming off of Strix's headshots right there. And this was the first time Tyra came into play this set. So overall, I think Sims and Erase were crushing it on DPS. They played what they're good with, what they've played throughout this entire tournament, and they did it very, very well against an NIP team. I think Exentra out-tanked Bonker and Diggy Dog throughout this entire set, give or take game 1. And Bird just really got out-focused so many times, especially by Simsaloo on the Maeve. He was able to dive him, and if he wasn't there to clean it up, Erase was. And if Erase dove on him, then Simsaloo was there to clean up. And they kind of did that with a lot of people like Fishco in the Virtus Pro set earlier on. But congratulations to Penta. They came all the way from the Paladins minor league, some PPL experience from these players. It was essentially it was just a big Cinderella team with an anime arc, as everyone said on Twitter. Simsaloo, he was blacklisted from being on teams for a while there. He's apologized, and this team gave him a chance. Cruncy was pretty much suspended from the league, for a good time. He was on NIP at that time, so he's back in the thick of things. And then you have Erase, who got the MVP, by the way, for the finals, and he's probably been on some teams before. I've never heard of him. I think I've seen his name once or twice, but he's made a big statement for his first LAN ever. And yeah, congratulations to Penta. NIP, don't shake your heads at anything. I know Bonker and I are really good friends. I love Bonker. I love everybody on that team as well. But I have full confidence that NIP will recover from this, and they will continue to be on top in the PPL. And at the end of the day, you lost MSI. For all the teams that did end up not being Penta, you did lose MSI, but at the same time, it's not HRX, and you still have a chance to fight your way back and make it to the World Championship. Not in 13 weeks. It's in a few months, so you have some time. But it is approaching faster than normal. Don't forget you can get your HRX tickets. Just visit Paladins Pro, Twitter at Paladins Pro. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ConsoleProNews. My name is Blue, and that was your MSI recap. Congratulations to everyone. Everyone's a winner. And shout out to Rain Day. He's been a big mentor and role model to me. You know, he's called me, he's texted me, he's messaged me and stuff like that. So, and we've talked in person. You know, I've gotten to hang out with him and be on the show with him. So I appreciate everything he's done for me, and I continue to appreciate him because he's not going anywhere. He's just moving back home. I can still message him. He's still that far away, and that goes for every one of you as well. You can still tweet him. He's still going to be around. He's a big part of this community still. That's not going to change. So yeah, keep grinding, everyone, and